We're just about online pieces, again, let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and do the meeting order. I don't think the politics, so you're not staying off. John, are you gonna roll? Or Susie? Well, let me pull it up. Our new website, which is getting updated for everything that you get done today. Do you want to introduce Susie? It would be my pleasure. This is our Climate Action Committee, or some of the members of it. This is our planning commission, Susie. Susie Mulvey. Thank you. And so she's going to be with us for your meetings, running the Zoom today, and helping assist. And so, yeah, we will see how she does helping us in your meetings.
Emmett Hopkins. Alex Goodman.
He's present on.
I'm here. I'll be there in about 10 minutes or less.
Dana Allen.
Let us know she's fine today.
Joshua Soni.
It's off and on.
Hannah Lee.
I'm here.
Lisa Lett Pierce.
Here.
Deborah Burns.
She's running here.
Sonali Shanti.
Here.
Zeno Swidjit.
Yeah.
Ambrosia Thompson.
She is on vacation.
Vert Fernandez.
Okay.
Diana Rich.
Vice Mayor Rich, was just not going to be here today.
And Sandra Mauer.
I'm here.
Thank you.
And I will calculate, do we have any action items that we calculate the forum? I think point balance is there. I'll confirm, but we will see if any of these turn into action items, and we the action items. Okay. And also possibly approval of the electrification survey.
Survey action, with action.
Yes. Wonderful, and unfortunately, I had an inspiration and I just forgot it and forgot to read it. So, if anyone feels inspired today by our beautiful Sonoma County weather, across so much of the world is not weather, feel free to share. But otherwise, we will move on to review the action items, which unfortunately I don't have. So we'll skip unless someone else knows any action items from last time. I understand you weren't.
I think I have one item, which is the SB 252 letter of support, and that will be on next week's council agenda.
Great, thank
I
you.
think
Thank
it
you,
is
Lisa. Oh, for that. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed, can you repeat it? Am I hearing you now?
Sure. So there was a proposal to ask council to support SB 252, which is have requesting that CalPERS divest of fossil fuel companies. And so that went through the climate action for recommendation, was recommended to council, and Lisa and Woody helped with the letter for that, and that will be on city council's agenda next Tuesday for their consideration.
All right, so now we're at the meeting where we take comments from the public regarding any items that are not on their agenda. And I see we have a great sampling of the public today. Although maybe not gender balanced, so I don't assume anyone's gender. Does anyone in the public have something to speak to the committee about this on our agenda today? Okay, although we do have a lot on the agenda. Does anyone have a statement of conflict of interest regarding anything on today's agenda? All right, so we're ready for our planning department report. We will be doing that today.
I will be giving that, and it's fairly brief, so again, obviously, we have a new planning commission, we're very happy about that, it started last Wednesday. The city council did also pass both the operating budget and the capital improvement budget at their June 28th meeting on time, the first time in a couple of years since then. So, yeah, it was a tough year, as you all know. I don't think anything further with the kind of action, I think we've updated in the past, the items that were reduced by the budget subcommittee, the council did end up concurring with those. And so, things like the zero waste, you didn't say that we would do that, and we would do that in grants. So the zero waste subcommittee, would be looking at that. I think zero waste number does sometimes have grants in the last year for like the compost purchasing and things like that. But I don't know if they will this year or not. If they do, we'll just like utilize that funding. But otherwise, we do still have support for like the active transportation plan, which is going to be happening this year, or has already started. And so that is, that's part of the time, the department's normal work plan. That involves the COC, otherwise, obviously we're going to go maybe continuing things fine. And I think the other items, I'll ask John to chip into, you might know some items. But we do, Widmark, the 84 units affordable housing in Bodega. They have started in earnest their first phase, which is 48 units. And that they're doing grading right now because obviously that's the works. I'm in a pretty bit of grading, so that is ongoing right now. We also have the Habitat for Humanity 400-unit townhomes that was approved last year. It has submitted to the building permit. So looking at that project probably going forward this year, which is great. Those 4 townhomes are hostel safe and taking part there. The hotel spots will continue to work on their background stuff until they get their ability approval. So they can start construction and what else is going on? It's a busy summer. I mean,
We filed the notice of preparation for the camping project, which is 80 units of housing and variety community center in North Town. That has a scope set up on July 18th at 3 p.m. So if anybody's interested in that, we'll start the kind of kickoff meeting for the environmental impact for the project. And the other thing is last month, I sat on the SCA's backup transportation time webcam. That's going to be starting off here pretty soon. And they are going to be doing public involvement engagement throughout that whole process. So it's going to be a couple of years project with I think the proposed adoption for the jurisdictions in the times going to be at the end of February 25. I don't know exactly. If anybody's interested in it, I can share the slides from that kickoff.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna, I think we talked about this before. There is a citizen representative seat on that committee. And person will take up a style that it's getting that those were my things, and I mean, up here. I'm sorry, I'm going to read that, it's in council. I'm trying so much.
Yes, so that is member that doesn't need to be appointed by city council, so we have to bring that to the city council. Because they are an active voting member of that committee. So that was
Just to clarify, you took minutes, correct?
yeah. Yeah, so we would have to bring that to our city council to appoint a member, we have to have the application process for that.
So what's the timeline on that?
So John and I have not scheduled that yet, we do need to write a staff report for it. And so the earliest that we go to council would be August 1st, I think, I have a meeting. It's a consent item usually unless they want to discuss it. And let's remember, and then we can put our thoughts on that for council. I would have one for the SCTA. So we have, John is our official voting representative, which is the staff member, but you, and John, maybe you can explain, as you talk with them about whether or not we get that vote that and the citizen.
Yeah, so the citizen is an active voting member on the board, so they, if I was unable to attend the meeting, they could still vote for that, whatever action item is on there, so it would need to be a member that is approved by city council to be in that position. So it's not just an advisory with, you know, I'm unable to make it. It is an actual voting member.
So, we then look forward to, should first go to the city council, and then we have a
Yes,
request to, apply.
right, usually there's an application period.
What kind of month you set up, that's the
I think those are usually 4 weeks. I know we have at least 2 people interested those, so we might be able to shorten that. And we can, I mean, I think council generally wants, enough time that people of interest can apply to it. But we maybe, I would say like 3 weeks is probably good. And then those, whatever applications we get, we set it as council to review. That's something we need to work with the city clerk with.
Okay, well, that thing is moving forward, it's a very complicated matter, and it's the citizen who wants to step up and do this, needs a sufficient time to digest all the here.
Yeah.
I also had a question about, these building projects, is there like EV charging in the building project and bicycle parking?
Yeah, for the City Ventures project, yes, there is both. There is a requirement to provide percentage of the parking being EV charging, and then also within our code, depending on type of use, there's a requirement for bicycle parking. I know for sure that the City Ventures project, the Canopy, is providing some bike repair stations, or the small bike repair station on Milton that connects the West County Trail. On kind of Mill Station Road up there, and then it'll also have some paths going through the project to connect over to Grover, which is within Canada's jurisdiction.
Yeah, so is this aspect of the proposal of the developers reviewed by the planning department or the? I'm a bit concerned that this is all new technology, new infrastructure, new ideas. That the city not yet has the level of expertise to see whether this is really a good location for bicycle parking or.
These are
To reach out to people in the community.
Yeah, thank you, Zeno. So we did update our code in 2018, and in fact, January 2019, to require the EV parking. And we have a certain percentage that is required if it's regular charging, and then if we do the fast charge, I think there's a slightly different percentage. And then we do require bicycle parking for any development as a percentage of vehicle spaces. And for bicycle parking, I think I can probably qualify this, I didn't even contrast in five, I had a bicycle in the motorcycle. To understand where, you know, how many living cities, and to figure out where the best bicycle parking is, we do definitely need that as something apply. And making sure it's accessible as well as safe. For the bicycle part of it, and then for the EV side of it, our building department is, reviews, you know, for California building code requires, it requires that you have it. Every garage space EV ready anyway, which is what they will be doing, study veterans, because they do have garages. And then they will also have a certain percentage of EV chargers required as part of that development for the guest parking. So they will have that throughout, and the City Ventures project is actually also a electric only development, there's no gas. So, and that's kind of one of the things they do for the. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna mention, when we adopted tier 1, Title 24. Part of that covers EV parking as well. In fact, one of the things we had in our recommendation at the time was we should re-examine our code to find out if we've either been redundant or we have items in there that the state wouldn't allow. And I was involved in the 2018, you know, so.
Right.
All of these.
Thank you. I'm just going to repeat that since this is the area that the city did adopt tier 1 of the California Green Building Code, which does have the same kind of requirements for EV. We will keep them in our code because it also applies to major renovations where you might not necessarily get like when the Starbucks took over Burger King, we actually made it part of their use permit to install EV, even though the building code did not require that at all. So we are definitely looking at that as, you know, use permits and things like that. And we also require more bicycle free spaces that are required, just because it's right by the trail and everything. So yes, we are looking at that, and as we do development review, that is one of our hats and jobs as the planners.
Well, since we're talking about this, it is something that I've just been wondering about. And I'm assuming it's already been handled, but last time I saw the Woodmark stuff, it only called for the infrastructure and the wiring going to chargers, but not the chargers themselves that the developer would be required to install. So I'm just wondering if you happen to know if that changed out.
They are required to install a certain so what our code, I'm not memorized, but they are required to install a certain amount of chargers. Well, yeah. Because obviously if it's a rental development and it's affordable housing for income, who's not going to be able to install the charger themselves.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah,
to
one
move
more.
on? Okay, great question. Can you clarify, is there no council member who is on the SCPA board?
I believe Mayor Hinton is the city's representative to the SCPA board. What we're talking about here is the bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee, the countywide bicycle and pedestrian. It's one of their committees.
Okay. Sandy, do you have anything further for report from city council?
I have a couple of things. I also wanted to mention that the council finalized the budget and that it is a $2 million deficit budget this year. And certainly not sustainable. And very concerning, actually. But we gained a new fire engineer and a new police chief sergeant. And we lost the non-toxic newsletter, the STEP newsletter. So that won't be published. There's going to be one last newsletter, and then unfortunately. And the council is starting the process of hiring a new city manager. So this process can take months, but we've started that process. This group to know. And the other thing is that last night I attended the SBA, that's the Scottsville Downtown Business Association and the Chamber. They had a joint meeting and they're talking about merging. And I was listening, as I'm listening to the different people talking, thinking that possibly the Climate Action Committee might consider having a representative, or if you're interested in going to those meetings, because they are talking about community vitality and wellness, which I think is one of your appointments as well. So I just wanted to let you know that they're in the process of making possibly some really big changes for those groups. And they have a goal to vitalize the economy, vitalize the community. So it's a good goal. Thank you.
I have a question. The city manager you're recruiting, do they also be the city attorney or? It's,
It will just be a city manager position. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Sammy, and thank you, planning department, for your report. And we will move on to our regular agenda, which starts with Harry again. Perfect, community impact assessment.
And I apologize, I do not have an update on this. I know that, as a, and I don't know if there's much to report on it, but this, so it is in our general plan to consider using those.
Can you just do a tiny background summary?
Sure, so when you're doing development review, there are certain things that we are required to review, either by state law or by our own code. So like the California Environmental Quality, so environmental impacts, often you hear about that. As either example, you'll like the canopy unit development project is actually doing a scoping meeting for an environmental impact report to look at all the potential impacts. One of the things that does not get evaluated by CEQA is the sort of more esoteric, for lack of a better word, impacts on the community. So how will it change your community? CEQA does have greenhouse gas emissions and other air quality and those types of things as part of its impact report. But it doesn't have some of the community character and, that's the equity matrix that this group has developed is kind of lacking in that more nuanced way. And so the city of Sebastopol, when we did our general plan in 2016, recommended considering using those for larger projects as well. And so there was a group or a subcommittee that developed a draft community impact report kind of format. And so I will share that with the committee to so that you can potentially think about, is that something you could use or is for evaluating your own projects, or are there items that if we do start to use that, the climate action committee would want to see included. And I will say that was, this was a little bit before my time, it was decided not to adopt that. So I'm not quite sure the history on why they decided not to do that. I think it was just, well, I'm not going to say because I don't know, so I'm not going to, I'm not sure why. I'll try to find a little background on that, but there was a draft that was done and that was still considered all. Sure.
Great, thank you. So we'll move to the Vision Zero proposal. That's Emmett.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so the purpose of having this on the agenda today is just to give a little update on the concept of where we are and get some preliminary feedback from the community, so that we can come back in probably late summer. So I'm thinking that maybe I'll give a quick overview reminder of what the Vision Zero is and how it relates to climate action, and then we kind of jump into the draft proposed resolution and other transportation working group folks. Feel free to jump in if you want to add something. Okay, so what's Vision Zero? So real quick, off of the Vision Zero Network website, we have this summary. Vision Zero is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injury while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. And this is a global framework that's used, it's used a lot in Europe and has moved to a lot of American cities now. And Sonoma County has adopted a Vision Zero action plan countywide, and from that I can share just kind of these core principles of Vision Zero to get a sense of what how it's like what the strategy is. So the core principles are: one, saving lives, that human life and health should be the highest priority within all aspects of transportation systems. Two is prevention, that traffic deaths and severe injuries are preventable. And three is safe streets, that human error is inevitable and transportation systems should be designed to anticipate error. So the consequence is not severe injury or death. And so they kind of contrast like the traditional approach to transportation planning, the Vision Zero approach. So traditional approach, traffic deaths are inevitable. Vision Zero says traffic deaths are preventable. Traditional says perfect, we assume perfect human behavior in our systems. Vision Zero says we integrate human error into our approach. Traditional approach says we prevent collisions. Vision Zero says we focus more on preventing the fatal and severe injury crashes. That's everything. And then traditional approach puts individuals are responsible for safety. Enforced through traffic stops, and Vision Zero says that we have collective responsibility based on safe systems approach. So that's kind of the general concept, and then how it relates to climate action is, of course, that we're trying to, like 60% of our emissions in City County are from the transportation sector. We're trying to mode shift people away from cars into other modes, whether it's buses, bicycles, or walking, and one of the highest obstacles to shift to walking or bicycling is just the fear of safety, of worrying about yourself or getting hurt while you're out on the street for obvious reasons. So that's kind of the background of why this is a topic that interests me. And then jumping to the specific idea of the resolution for the city council to pass within the draft, the framework for this committee. Is it still in draft form? The framework with the action.
No,
Okay, it's a, I just wanted to refer to it forever. Within that, I'm getting echo there. We have anybody know that? So I guess this is within the transportation section, we have category number 3, making biking, walking, and other active transportation options safer and easier by implementing complete streets approach. And then within that, we have an action to review SCTA's Vision Zero report and adopt a Vision Zero resolution that identifies actions about implement so we need traffic fatality. So it's right there in the list of actions. And so what we've done is, so the idea here is to come up with a resolution that we could agree with the committee to present to the city council and propose that they pass it. And so we've taken the sample resolution that is from the Sonoma County Vision Zero action plan that they have in their appendix, and we modified it and plugged in City of Sebastopol everywhere it says your jurisdiction and things like that, of course. And made some other additions and are still getting some feedback on it to do some final modifications, but we would like to A, take questions about it, B, any specific feedback about the draft that was shared with the agenda, and then we also have a couple specific questions that I can get to maybe after the general feedback.
So I have a draft here that was sent out. Is that what we're talking about right now? Yeah, it's not finished. It's still a draft. Do you have any statistics to put into some of these graphics?
We haven't dug up the Sebastopol specific statistics yet, just to put in there. There is the county does have their Vision Zero dashboard that So, yeah, we'll need to get that, but we do have in there, we do have the specific, I'm trying to remember the exact terminology, but. High injury, intersections, I believe there's reference to those, there are feelings about.
Anything for you? Okay. I have lots of questions, but I don't know. Off the floor.
Can I
See
say
anyone?
just add
Yeah.
something as staff? So thank you, that was a wonderful presentation. I did also check with SCTA and contact there who's and the Vision Zero, it does not necessarily commit the city to anything that would be sort of burdensome in terms of budget, or, you know, that we have to do this or that. So I did check on that, and so I think as staff, we feel comfortable with this.
Thank you so much. On the other hand, not committed to complete. This is meaningless, so, yeah, so I had the same question as Sandy, like, we have our local numbers, and the third whereas is where we. It's not highlights, you have a lot of places that are highlighted, which are things in, but, you give Sonoma County, percentages, but it's hard to know whether this is cited Sebastian in particular. So I would hope that you would at least try to find Sebastopol specific for that area, as well as other the ones that you do have highlighted. I would love for there to be an actual listing or an appendix that says what the 4 high-entry intersections are. Like listing them. Or some kind of map, or it's just something that shows a little bit more concrete where we're talking about impact here. And then I wondered about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th whereas which is racial profiling and competitive equality or disparities in traffic enforcement. And while I know that that's true nationwide, I'm not sure if we have clarity on that in our city. And I have some concerns about bringing something like that forward at the city level without any data to back that up. So unless we cite where that's coming from, it feels like we could be criticizing a department that we don't know is guilty of that. We have confidence in. Yeah. Well, I have concerns about including that, although I think it's an important point in a larger scale. I'm not sure at city scale whether that's something you would want to include. I do feel like in this larger thing, there's so much here that you lose a little bit of the sense of like, here's the theory of change of like why Vision Zero would work. And I think this is a traffic safety plan with a climate co-benefit, and being a little bit more clear of here's the main thrust of this, and here's why it also benefits the climate, instead of mixing it all in together, because the logic gets a little out there of just trying to pull them all together. So just laying that theory of change out a little more straightforwardly. And I know you were building this off someone else's ideas. and it's you know, maybe it would be a lot of work to go back, but I do think that would make it more clear and potentially more compelling. So what are my other comments? Sorry, give me a minute. If you have any responses to anything that I'm saying, just button.
Yeah, following up on that, one we had talked about also having a letter that would accompany it to city council, the committee, council. I think that might be one place where we could cover some of those kind of the more boiled down period change, how it is change, or we could put that one really up. But I do think, I guess to me, we don't want to. I wouldn't want to strip out a lot of the other relevant things that are more of the vision planning related, because if we're going to have the pass to be a resolution, it seems like it should be comprehensive and not just like part of it. You know, it's that.
Well, yeah, it's not that it should be a separate resolution, just just kind of clarifying, when this is a safety thing, it also provides like the climate code and it, you know, instead of like, this is a climate, it just feels a little bit like all, you know, throwing emissions in here. It has health, you know, it has climate code benefits, it has health code benefits, it has the like, the main thrust is traffic safety and preventing deaths, and then, you know, it's like any multi-fund, anything that has the eco benefits, you have to be clear, you know. Here's where these different things are all coming together. I mean, and for all of it. I did feel like I, as a reader, and I know I'm not a city council member, so I'm not some of the people who would be doing this, that maybe it's more clear if you're a little bit more involved in all the different levels. But it's confusing to me, what is the difference between a complete streets approach and a vision zero approach? Like what, how do those things complement each other? How do they work together? How are they different? Because complete streets, in my surface level understanding of it, is also a kind of systems level approach to traffic planning and all these things. So what does Vision Zero bring that complete streets doesn't already have? So just delineating that a little bit would help me as a reader understand why this is needed. Yeah, as someone who's had not one, but two friends and colleagues that are down pedestrian intersections and needed completely meaningful replacements. I'm for it all, but I think we just try to do this good job as we can. On the last page, where it's be it further resolved that there is examples of specific types of actions, to me that's the core of it. And so the rest of it is just is set up, but that's where I'm like, oh, this is what I was waiting for. So I think that's really the heart of this whole proposal is what is it that we need? Yeah.
I think, not to have a pun here, but I think we kind of need to know where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? Or we should say, like, we can adopt it. And that's all cool, but what are we gonna do, or what are we asking the council to do?
Yeah, and yeah, I think we can add some things there, but I think we can't say, right. I mean, the council's not gonna agree to say that we're gonna put us or protected bike lanes like on all major streets next year or something, right? But so we can list like priority street treatments that are proven to be effective, I think. And I did try to, like, those last two be it resolved, to me were important as well, that are basically like creating like a way that the committee can have some agency to be a part of for change in the future. And I'll stay with there for people who are looking at it. The City of Scottsville will collaborate with the Transportation Working Group of the Scottsville Climate Action Committee to identify additional high priority roadways and intersections within the city, and then related note that the city would collaborate with the working group of the communities to identify, evaluate, and implement solutions in high priority roadways and intersections. And of course, it doesn't say how, you know, how we'll collaborate. And so if anyone has ideas or
It almost seems like those two last items maybe could be combined because they're almost saying the same thing, but you know, that's just a problem.
I have a question or comment. Didn't we just do the master plan for the city? Did we just finish that?
So we did the general plan update in 2016, and that did identify, I mean, this is very focused on bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. There's been a lot of follow-on work with that. So W. Krantz, which is a traffic consultant, but they do a lot of consulting for the city. They have done pedestrian safety studies, and so we have been implementing And obviously, since that 2016. The green bicycle lanes and, our engineering departments work with Caltrans to get those installed. A lot of the ADA crosswalk, something ADA, and we are putting in additional crosswalk improvements, both with Caltrans, who are doing one at McKinley and 116, so right at the plaza crossing to where the hotel site is. We are doing some rapid flashing beacons on Bodega Avenue, and there's one in location, which is approved by council. And some of the numbers there are two intersections that are being done with the Hicks Road grant. So the city's actually engineering as a team is actually pretty focused on that. The other thing that we have done is we did do a local road safety plan recently, which has been adopted. So there are a lot of pieces of it that are as your roadmaps of what we should be doing, you know, with that.
And just so I understand, for the general plan, how often do we, like, is that every 5 years that we do that? Is that what I understand?
About every 20 years.
But there's no like meeting in between where you like just review, like, I thought it was 5 years.
So the housing element is required to be every 8 years. That's the only element that has a required update. However, the planning department does do an annual service report to council. And in that, we probably every couple of years, we do an update on, like, if you look at the general plan, the last chapter is implementation. And it's actually kind of a big chart, and it organizes and prioritizes those like immediate actions, which are category A, B, and C, and the more future kind of range stuff. I know there's some ongoing stuff in there. We do an update every couple of years to council, gathering out information from all the different departments on where, because the general plan is a lot of it's planning, but some of it's like the engineering department and the fire department, there's a safety element and whatnot. So we do have 50,000 copies on.
So I guess my last question is, given all those different things, where do you see the best implementation of? We can adopt it, right? And that's, you know, we're all for it. But where does the actual like? Where can this group, or where can we support the city and the city staff and like identifying ways that, you know, opportunities or intersections of data, like, well, where can we be the most beneficial? I guess where maybe filling out that a little bit of that section is giving us some brainstorming part of that. You know, what are the specific types of actions the city can take to reduce fatalities, and where can we help there?
Sure. So like I said, W-Trans does do kind of analysis of intersections based on like the local road safety plan did actually identify a lot of the intersections of concern. So the local data and understanding, and I can you know, I can send out a link to that local road safety plan so y'all look at that, because that did look at like we have had a couple of pedestrian fatalities in the past, and so certainly have upgraded some of those. But we know where there were incidents, and so identifying, like say, for instance, I know like Morris Street and Liberty Parkway, where people are going back and forth, and there's no crosswalk from Morris Street and Henry 12 anywhere north of there, but there's a lot of pedestrian crossings, and so that was identified, and again, up here at the community center as potential crosswalk kind of stuff. So I think for the transportation group, and also that should also include our planning commission, kind of as one of those steps, because they do look at land use and our general plan. So capital improvement plan in terms of when the city needs help prioritizing, you know, which they're kind of looking at, you know, we have this local road safety plan, we know the general plan because we're looking at being involved in the types of planning meetings that with the larger projects, we have going on the city ventures, there is a traffic study done. The general plan does note the locations in town that need additional signals or roundabouts. That's they're all on 116, one is for Crest, it's called British Road, Kilsburg and Murphy, so 116 and Murphy. And we have new potential 20 units for them there. They have not submitted their application yet, but we've got to trigger that or not done a vehicle ride. And there's already crosswalk there, and then COVID lane, which is, that to me, that's kind of the example where they're down without, compared to the other two, which really don't have that. Like you'll bring a break from the United around, that's gonna be simple. In my mind, it's something, but the COVID lane that, and so that's actually one where, the planning department, so involvement in the various work products that the city is doing to help bring those to light and advise us on that is actually where we can use a lot of help. A couple things going on. The city did apply for a sustainable transportation grant to Caltrans. We're supposed to hear sometime in summer, and then that means from Caltrans on that, and that would that'd be led by the engineering department and that'd be pronounced, but that would be looking at potentially and making sure that the downtown area is walkable and things like that. Yes, potentially looking at the 2-way versus 1-way street, and even folks on this committee. Everyone's talked that or made public comments about that, but that is also an agenda plan to review, so that's something that's comments. The city venture project and is on development on the north side of town, so how is that going to impact COVID lane? That's what we're looking at, we'll be looking at. And then additionally, the planning department we got a $250 million grant to look at the 116 corridor in terms of the zoning for where we have commercial, are there areas where it's appropriate to allow residential without having to go through a use permit process, what would that look like, and also what type of infrastructure would be needed as part of that. And so that it's all, because it's all kind of intertwined. And so involvement in those when we have community meetings or when we have materials, it's sort of like when we did the Color Creek naturalization work in Ice Park. This group, and particularly Josh as a landscape artist, and I attended some of those meetings made by and I was really happy to have
Jared,
Yeah, just a clarification. The city's obligated to update the general plan every 20 years, but it can amend it at any point, hoping that it doesn't trigger any IR. Because I remember we amended the general plan because it was some zoning that didn't work out, and the land use specified in the general plan was inappropriate for where the city was going.
Correct, so you can understand why you can do up to 5 general plan runs here, so they do limit that. Because it's supposed to be a single document and there's long-term vision, so we will be working on one this year to incorporate our wonderful hazard mitigation plan into our safety element. I know that is, but yeah, there's definitely capacity.
The only reason I was pointing that out was with this with Vision Zero, there may be points that either want to be emphasized or modified, and that maybe probably wants to address it.
Right, and then also in our general plan, the pedestrian bicycle master plan from 2010, 2011 is adopted by reference in the general plan. And again, that we're right now going through the active transportation plan that's strong every quarter that the kickoff of those just happened, and so we're involved with that because a lot of those are, related agreements. Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get more of a specific as far as possible action. But as a pedestrian who uses a lot of these crosswalks that have the nice lights clock device almost every day, multiple times. And there are so many near misses that happen, even with the blinking lights. I think on 12 in particular, there are too many signs that are blocking the blinking lights. Some obvious stuff that's low hanging fruit that we could do to improve traffic safety. You get out there with the truck going, and the other pedestrians don't even see the blinking sign because the truck blocks it. So you're out there in the intersection where a truck might be, if somebody stops. If you have some cue to those other drivers that are right next to them. If it's 2 lanes, there's a real issue of visibility. And I think there was already, and I'm not sure if fatality or not, at that intersection, a definite injury to pedestrian. And I've seen it multiple times, near misses. And we think these are the most safe because they have a blinking light.
There's a red light on Highway 12, and the cars drive straight through the red light.
Yes, all of us walkers, many of us are walkers, no, of all the teachers out there. So thank you all, thank you, Emmett, and I'll keep asking you more questions.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how sometimes the things that we think will make things safer actually make things worse.
Yeah, and interesting, we call that alarm fatigue. When people start ignoring alarms. So I think Carrie or Emmett, Alex, you asked my next question, which was like, how will this collaboration take place, or how will the collaboration be useful? And I think it's important for Carrie to weigh in on that. And I think this question is for Emmett, but you may want to deflect it to Carrie. On the be it for the results above those last two, so that the city of Sebastopol is committed to using its standardization zero technical to monitor and progress towards the key actions outlined in the Sonoma County action plan. Like when we say city of Sebastopol, like who do we actually mean, and has that department been consulted about using that tracking tool?
I should probably ask that period. Period has been consulted about this general resolution. We have a process.
Yeah, I'd like to get the specifics on it, so you like some things like the racial profile, and I agree with Chair Lee on that. But yeah, I'm happy to work with, just sort of go through and red line, like for the consulting, you know, yeah, I want to make sure that the transportation group, but also the county commissions and do it since they're by law. If there's something going on, if there's any kind of new recommendation, so yeah, I can work with him. Great, or have John, since he's actually more transportation, or go his role on the decision.
So last question, and then I'll shut up. Which I should have made my first question, which is really like, this is within our, like doing the vision zero work is within our climate action framework. But just for you, and like, what do you see? Like, what do you see this helping? Like, what's your personal vision for how for bringing this forward and the city?
Yes, I was starting to think about my responsibilities in my personal vision, so that's my caveat. So I mean, I was thinking as everyone was talking, I did kind of forget to say what's the point of the resolution when I was introducing that part, but there's a couple reasons for that we thought of creating a resolution, which one of which is just to sort of institutionalize like this idea of prioritizing safety for pedestrians and bicyclists on the roads that is already happening within our city staff, and it's a high priority for our city council and our city staff personally, but it's maybe not like written into anything official, or it is in some sense, but this would help to sort of cement that in the future going forward as it's turned over to council and staff. And the second is that it may provide some tiny bit of higher likelihood that the city could get grants that would be like a regional grant that would go through SCTA and sort of just boost that a little bit to be able to say that all of the cities pass resolutions for the favorite vision zero. Personal vision, I love to like get as much teeth in this as possible so that we can make it useful. I don't want to just have it council saying we're for vision zero and for the sake of that. So that's where I think continue to think about these questions and how done in a way that is feasible, not going to be costly for the city, but also be meaningful is, yeah, is important. And I wanted to just add real quick to like, I have a few questions that I should have mentioned at the beginning, but one is, that I'll just mention one, which is, we were interested to know if there are suggestions for like how to engage community groups that may represent people who are for whom safe streets are important and get their input on this process, not just sort of failing without talking. So we're talking about like Sebastopol and just getting their ideas before we move forward too, but if anyone has any other ideas, we'd love to hear that.
in schools and senior center.
Any,
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is about connecting a lot of people in the country who work with it. So Sebastopol was actually part of the committee that put the document together. It was adopted by the cabinet, and by a handful of city. And this committee meets regularly and discusses the state of safety. Classification of the country, it has a dashboard that collects information. So by passing this resolution, we tie ourselves in more closely to that community. And I think that's important. I mean, you might talk about a general plan, but the general plan stopped at the city border. Right, so we had a traffic guy, a bicycle guy on High Street. Happily, it was not in town. Looked like a big part of the. But that's silly, right? The thing about safety, traffic safety, is that problem, right? So this allows us also to make some kind of movement. To bring not just safety together, but also in wider service area. That going to enemies, you go out of town. But that's where a lot of people struggle. So I feel that this is bringing us out of a connection with other people. Staff people, community people. The leader of this group is Merton Morris, the College of Sonoma Health Department. Right, so it has all these aspects of involved.
great, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, just a couple of things on the resolution itself. And thoughts, and I do agree with in terms of what the council and city has done in the past few years, and I think actually in some ways it acknowledges the priorities the city has already placed on pedestrian safety and improvements. Through directing staff to the grants and, finishing the safety plans and having staff work on the ways and that type of thing. I do also agree that competitiveness for grants, if you can add in that we pass this resolution and, we are interested in that, that's something is, as someone who's had to compile anything that you might have to back up a grant, but this is, this one was, arrow in the quiver for that kind of stuff. I will say one of the things that would actually, I think, in terms of what the question of what we're trying to do is to really show that the transportation working group is committed to being involved with open review as community members, staff or a senior center in the county of Sonoma is about to be embarking on the drill fast. But having folks who would sort of have taken the time to the local safety plan and then with the cities wanting to build these to be engaged with the county when they do the transportation component of their general plan, because we know that that's a big piece, but SCTA has done traffic modeling, we know that there's a higher number of pass-through trips, so we weren't stopping in Sebastopol than any other city in town. And it makes sense for basically to get Williams County, the coast as well as along the residential areas, right? So, but to make sure that that is coordinated with the county, there's a lot of the development that's happening out west, or the kind of commute patterns that are happening are not necessarily originating out of Sebastopol roads. And so like I actually remember thinking there, so it was at the very first community meeting, I was concerned about traffic and traffic on Vegas and vice versa. The city hasn't actually done any significant development on Bodega Avenue. But there is a lot that's happening, you know, outside of the borders. And so having folks, so to me, having this resolution show that the climate action committee has representatives that are committed to helping the city staff, you know, being involved in reviewing our work, bringing it together, studying grants, as well as being involved in so that, you know, that section about consulting with me, but you're actually being involved in those types of things. I think it would be really helpful for this council, so they understand why we're proposing it.
Thanks, Donna.
As far as allies go, and thinking of the chamber of commerce and the businesses, we can share with them these ideas that will more foot traffic, I think would increase business, whereas normally it's thought of to bring in more parking to increase business, but maybe it's something strolling down the street and they're engaging with more of those places. I don't think that's.
All right. Hi, Sandy.
I'd like to see the original resolution that's still on passed. It says it's in appendix D, but I didn't see in what we were sent. So I'd like to see that at some point. I agree about the racial profiling that kind of jumped out at me as sort of like odd. Not, it just seems like I agree with Ken on that. And there's a SCTA, it's a quote, but it's not spelled out. So technically that should be spelled out. That's in, whereas in June of 2022 stuff. It's all yellow now. It says SCTA, I think that should be spelled out. That's a piece.
Go ahead.
I just wonder too, with Vision Zero, I mean, from my perspective, it seems like the biggest thing we could do for safety would be a bypass, for the traffic going through town, but anyway, I don't know if that's being looked at with the grant or anything else, but just to shoot that out.
So I can write a little bit of information on that. So the city's general plan does talk about clouding the county. We're looking at down the road as a bypass. But I think and other potential alternatives to those right to downtown for the doing that suggests Pleasant Hills as a county secondary. Again, though, that would be part of the county to, I mean, obviously on the roads in the county. District bylaw here, but it isn't, so it isn't our district, you know, so I represent is part of that. And then the other thing, and the engineering manager to me and I talked about this a little bit, just in terms of what potential could do. You're not necessarily getting a bypass, but enhancing other road corridors like your hill road and Occidental, so that the people are heading, you know, not passing through the city. So I think you want to be really careful if you're not doing a bypass and people aren't stopping at grocery stores and these other shops here, right? So we still want people who are shopping and have to stop down. But if you're simply doing a commute route, other better, more efficient ways that you can do that to get from where you live to Sacramento. And the reality is you know, there's never going to be mass transit going from a very rural area, you know, until you get to unknown. So.
All right, thank you all. Sam?
Yeah, I encountered an organization called Sebastopol Walks. And that's, I think, mentioned in the newsletter. But it's hard to find who is in charge there, so that would be a good way of approaching. I'd like to know who,
And that's actually sponsored by Councilman Amana, do you have?
I can't remember his name, I'm sorry.
Is it Richard Nichols?
Yes.
Richard Nichols.
Richard is still over there?
Richard.
Huh?
I don't.
Right, sir. All right,
Yes, sir.
Just on that topic, I know Tor Allen is going to do a solar Sebastopol tour in August, is it? On the Sebastopol walks, Saturday morning, we don't have the date, but.
all right. Any members of the public have anything else to say about this? And just so you know, as you can see, we don't really have public comments, so if you want to say anything.
I will just ask you to, if you could come up to the microphone, just because this is being recorded for the website. So,
Microphone, sir. All right, so moving on. Alex, you ready for EV charging?
Born ready.
Awesome.
Well, first of all, I just want to say it's nice to see you all, because I wasn't here in the last meeting, and had a few weeks of feeling sick and not my best. So I want to bring a little inspiration today, just be grateful for, being able to be here today and feeling good, if we're all feeling good, or just feeling, able and well enough to show up, and also just, happy and healthy and excited for the sunny weather outside. So let's get this thing going. Okay, so EV charging. So this is an ongoing project. We have a working group agenda item officially. It's submitted as a draft. Essentially, we're proposing on-street EV charging. What I believe we've talked about this in the past. Essentially, we're looking at putting in more EV charging, specifically targeted at what we're calling on-street or utility pole charging, where it gives access to people that may not be able to have a charger at home, or they're renting, they can't put one in, or they live in you, or they live in an apartment. So that's the general idea and goal for this project. Just a little more background here. It's obviously gonna take some, a good amount of work from city staff, and I have some questions for you guys on that. This is obviously a proposal, so. But we've definitely done some work. I mean, as far as I understand it, EJVs, has a lot of through something called Title 20. They're basically funding a lot of the infrastructure, basically going up to our panel. So that's the good news. But it's still going to cost money to get engineering costs and get an electrician to get a panel installed, and then also working out the deal with based on how we structure a deal with the charging platform provider. I specifically done research with a company called Blink, and they have different revenue models where essentially it's no cost to us, but they own the unit, and they do a revenue share with us. So there's some return, but obviously the return coming back is like a 5-year plus payout. And so that's just based on basically what I've submitted so far. The last piece I'll say about this is that we're also looking at other potential options to partner with other organizations, potentially, like some power, some other person may be able to, it may be a slightly different structure, or there may be able to cover those expenses or whatever. Because I know obviously my next question is, I know I missed the last meeting, but it sounds like budget is a real constraint. So And I also did submit this as a budget item, and I don't know if it was approved or not.
It was really my one, but it's.
Okay, great, so not approved, that's great, what is the likelihood of getting something that's removed from the budget approved from the city council?
I would say not likely this year at all.
Okay, that's great.
So I think, actually, may I step in here just for a second, because I think this is, so all of the light poles in the city are actually owned by PG&E, not by the city. So, but one of the things that, city staff has done is, and this was actually the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which we have a representative to.
Actually, I represent old people.
Right. You can, I think they have an interest in this. They put out a query for people who might be interested in electrification projects. So we actually submitted a letter of interest for, on-street charging. This is that kind of not good, like, how do you deal with that? Our CPA, kind of, you know, has been this a few times, also submitted the same.
I remember this.
Yeah. And so MTC is really slow on that. It sounds like it's maybe like a year out or so. And so that's kind of the avenue that we as city staff have been able to do. And Tanya, our CPA submitted us as a potential pilot community. So that kind of makes it, you know, there's two interests on, and then, you know, sort of a way of working it out. But that would allow, you know, our CPA to, the city staff here, which we don't have city staff to commit to this kind of project at this time. It would allow, if we were to pick that and, you know, through the letter of interest, it's a way where MTC would be paying and doing a lot of background work potentially. There's a lot bigger people in the room when you're talking to PG&E than the city staff.
Of course. So I just want to clarify what you're saying. So you're saying that obviously there's budget where obviously it's going to cost us out of pocket. Like we're going to actually pay a contract, we're going to pay an engineer to do something. There's also the cost inherently of like, hey, it's city staff time. What you're saying is we don't have resources for either one.
Correct.
So, great, that's just good clarification. So even if we were able to get a grant to cover the actual cost of installation and all the actual hard costs of it, we still don't have city staff time to be able to support the project.
Well, I think it depends upon, I mean, like all of the stuff that you're saying here, like. I don't see anywhere in here where the agreement with PG&E is included, and that's the piece that we don't have an answer to right now. And that's why we went through the MTC. You know, we don't know that, we don't have any say over it, it's a PG&E owns it.
Oh, I think, so
And it's part of
let me
their,
clarify that. So are you talking about a light pole or are you talking about a utility?
they're the same thing.
No, they're not.
Oh,
So-
sorry.
so-
They're not the same thing, but they're.
So they're owned,
Not the same.
they're owned by, so just to clarify, so this model, and I could share some pictures if I could share my, this is complicated, but I could send some pictures out via email or. It's just gonna be hard to share, but essentially this model, because it was it became too complicated with the infrastructure of a light pole based on, there's not a power infrastructure there. And then we essentially, what our idea is utilize basically next to a utility pole, so it's a minimal amount of electrical infrastructure. And whether we use the pole itself or we essentially just create the panel or utility structure right next to the pole, it's not actually connected to PG&E's equipment. We're pulling it right off of, the biggest issue is making it look good and making sure that you guys are okay with the design plan, right? And making sure that it follows our whatever our, you know, our aesthetics and see whatever you would call that, our zoning
Standards and then you're not blocking side rights, that kind of stuff, so. Jerry, do you wanna? Oh, but Jerry, thank you.
Part of the discussion occurred because the articles I read and that I looked at. Well, like this,
Oh, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You want to try it again?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. In Brooklyn, along with the city of New York. One of the charging companies, the utility. With the other partner of this, they're working on doing street side charging. We saw it in Europe, just like every place as well. I was surprised to find out that PG&E owns the light poles, because in the city of Sunnyvale, city of Sunnyvale owns the light poles and pays PG&E by the pole. So as we put in LEDs, we didn't get any discounts as a result of that. And PG&E got a better and better deal at the time. The reason for the utility poles as opposed to a light pole, in many cases, the light poles can be, especially the LEDs, 110, 220, they don't have a current. And so that wouldn't be the right place. And that's why I actually suggested we focus on utility poles. I have been in discussion with members of Sonoma Clean Power as well. Because they're really more interested in the apartment buildings and what they can do with that. And part of this occurred from a discussion in the Electric Auto Association on why is it you have wires hanging on the public charging places. In Europe, they don't. You bring your own wire, which is one of the most vulnerable pieces of the entire puzzle. And Brad Arthur contacted me from Sonoma Clean Power and said, "This is a company called Orange, and they do this and blah blah blah." So we contacted Orange. You're right. This is the very beginning, and the discussions we've had so far had to do with this. The nut is PG&E. They want it metered. The question is whether we can convince PG&E that any of the utilities, any of the companies providing the charging stations, who also meter, would accept the records from the stations and then bill back. Okay, and the reason for Sonoma Clean Power was, I thought it was a business opportunity for Sonoma Clean Power, and anybody who knows Jeff recognizes any way he can get more revenue, he's going to try to do that and expand the impact of the good things that Sonoma Clean Power can do. So that's where it is, and I think it's up in the air. You're right, there is money at the MTC for this as well. And that program will be at least a year away. And MTC has just gotten the funding to keep running our transit systems and MTC for at least one more year, or maybe 2 more years, and hopefully we'll get beyond that. But that's what I know about this so far. And like I said, both in the state of Washington and in Brooklyn, the role the city would play is not in putting in the stations, from my point of view. The role the city plays is to make sure that the municipal code we have allows it to occur and says what conditions are. We do this in many, many places throughout the city. We have to allow something. In many cases, we want to promote it. And we can do that also in our code by having certain stipulations. But that's, I think, a major role for the city is looking at our code and saying, if somebody wanted to do this, if the utility wanted to do it, it could be PG&E, it could be Sonoma Clean Power, it could be somebody else. Would we allow it? And it's the same thing when we were talking about the Bird and the other companies. Does our code allow? Does our code protect people from the devices sitting around? And most cities, we don't have this in our code because it's all new technology and new concepts, and we've never thought about it before. So it's one of the things that we need to be adjusted. Anyway, that's the position I have.
Thank you, that's helpful.
I sent you a picture there on email, so if you could share that, just want to get a visual just so that people that understand. I might have to zoom in a little bit, but thank you, Jerry, for your higher level explanation and more concise description of what we're doing. I think ultimately we're trying to get more EV charging. That's ultimately the goal. We're trying to figure out a way to go about that.
I still has a question on you.
So if the city installs it and manages it, there isn't a potential revenue stream?
I mean, I think that's the ultimate question of how the model is designed. And I think that would be a way to make it more exciting.
I'm trying to zoom in.
We do that now with the charge point chargers, the city owns those. And these other models are, the city wouldn't own it, it would be some with a utility or other company, because the consolidating were pretty costly, and we get $2,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Right,
It's software service.
right.
It's not only.
So here's just an example of, so this is, you can see the utility pole behind the charger, and then you can actually see the charger itself. So this is a kind of a preliminary prototype of what we would consider
So it's like freestanding.
as one,
to power
one option,
and very.
right?
And then the orange model is, there's no cable. And you carry your cable with you, you're away with it, you know, and you're plugging it in. To the phone. Cars coming.
Right.
So I will say, I have not looked at our municipal code and remember that, whether or not we explicitly allow that currently, but I think something like this, I don't think there'd be an issue for, obviously, the council going to go through if it's a change to municipal code to allow it, but just as a policy, our climate action framework, which is adopted by council, does talk about encouraging this and trying to figure out a way to do this, because we don't have laws that can just expand even that we must have some other different things, so. Just looking at this as a model, so can be honest, so it's very helpful.
Yeah.
I don't see where this is going to be.
I guess the last question, because ultimately the first proposal was having a charging company partner with the city, but it sounds like that's kind of out of the question in terms of actually getting these like on the ground. It sounds like it may be more advantageous for us to either create a recommendation to make code, or just try to get RFPs to get actual companies that want to put chargers in our area.
So, so I can look at the municipal code to look at whether or not it would inherently be allowed. It may be that it's allowed to the franchise agreement, which is the PG&E's are regulatory for their poles. It's and so planning for poles, there's agreements in place for that, how that works. I don't know. It's not my area of specialty with public works, public area. Yeah, I do know that, Dante, from Public Works, has been working with PG&E to try to get EV charging at the Burnett Street parking lot. And I can tell you that took a huge number of hours. I was involved in some of those meetings, and it never ended for anywhere because of the cost to do the really high-end chargers instead of the basic chargers. So he is looking with the grant writer that we have, and we gave us a grant which we submitted for us to potentially fund that project. So, but yeah, I do, RFPs and vetting companies and policies to reach the process.
Carrie, is there anything, given that it says there's no budget? Is there anything that the CEC, Transportation Working Group, could do to pre-position information if NPC, if grants come through, if other pathways open up, is there a level of pre-work that's going to need to be done anyway, or identifying likely sites, or something that could take some work away from city staff?
Sure. So I think, something like that, because obviously the staff has lost time to research something that isn't, one of our critical paths. So like stuff like this where, and if there's an outline of here's what's needed, in terms of the infrastructure, and if there's information, the piece I'm not sure is how to coordinate with PG&E's and utility poles, if that's this group directly, or, they do have a point person that we've been working with for the EV chargers who's been really proactive in grants. But that's kind of one like, I don't know if MTC has any greater capacity to do this kind of thing. Because again, if it's PG&E, it's going to affect every single city in the Bay Area.
Yeah. They haven't given any presentations on this, so. Staff members for them. There was one that I did contact, but. I'll check on. Sound that one.
Gary, can you clarify your question about? Are you saying that it just takes a lot of staff time to work with PG&E to facilitate the installation or facilitate the approval? What exactly are you?
Well, like, for instance, with so you've got a utility pole, is there enough power, how's it gonna work? Who's going to be increasing that, who's going to be running that? Is it, I mean, if it's just, if, you know, if PG&E came in and said, we wanna do this, it'd be really easy from a city perspective.
So, okay, because I already inquired fairly extensively with PG&E engineer about this, so. I guess I think that's part of the proposal is essentially building an engineering plan to submit to PG&E with all that information, and that's that's part of one of the line items of $2,500 to develop that to submit it. So I guess it just
Right.
it's like it's kind of like chicken and egg in a way, but it's like it's not that complicated. I guess it's really just do we have the funding at that point? It's not.
Right, and so the city doesn't have a staff engineering department, we have a contract in here, so we.
Basically hired out.
Hiring a
Yeah,
consultant to do it,
exactly.
so that's a.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any cities in the area that we see this? Yeah. Or even in California, or like, I guess in PG&E service area.
Oh,
maybe.
That's where the question comes up, and that's why Carrie.
Yeah.
nailed it.
We had there was one in Lancaster, but when Woody knew the planning director, but we could never get a hold of them together. Like, that's about how they would facilitate that.
Okay, I think go ahead, Sam.
Would these require dedicated parking spaces?
Yes.
Because I think that would be an issue for the public, if the public is already complaining about the loss, the parking issue downtown. But the other thing is there a map, or I know this is a way it sounds, I think it'd be really helpful to have a map of all the current on-street charging spaces. For the public, so that we make a decision.
There are no on-street charging. There's parking lot charging, but this is a model. Yeah, this is a model for like more like residential or like close to multifamily.
So it's not necessarily in the downtown.
Correct.
Yeah, and part of that, is, you look at sort of the older apartment buildings, the landlord isn't necessarily gonna retrofit the parking lot to install EVs. Our code requires that we do new housing, as we talked about with Woody Market and city ventures, but not to retrofit. So how can we make EVs more accessible for renters and people living in? There's also plenty of owners who live in older home, Victoria, and they have parking on site, and how can they get access to charging? So it's actually more focused on residential areas, I think, where that can be helpful. If you don't have somewhere to charge your EV, you're not gonna buy an EV.
All right, thank you, Alex, and transportation, okay. Hopefully we don't have time for the electrification survey results. Okay. We need 5 minutes at the end to clean up.
Next to Dale.
Perfect, yeah.
You want me to share my head? No, with that. Sure.
Yeah.
Oops. That's all it's here. Should have hold this. I hope so. Okay. Okay, oh wait, wrong one, thank you very much. No, wait, I don't know why I opened it. You said.
Mary, you might want to move that mic a little bit so that.
Yeah,
I can-
good, okay. No, that's not you. I thought I had nothing.
You want to carry the chair?
So. Yeah, just. Yeah, you might have. I put it. Here it is. All right, is that what we got?
Or the new
Oh.
chair.
I'm not sure. Yeah, pretty fun.
And while we are waiting, I'm just gonna say our next agenda item, the Garland Apple Fair, was gonna be Ambershire and Magna, and assuming we're tabling that. But if, because of our next meeting is gonna be so close to the Apple Fair, if anybody wants to volunteer for that event, if we are having it, which I'm not sure yet. Just let me know and I'll make sure that they get that information.
What are they doing?
The 12th and 13th, I believe, of August.
Yeah, and that is not a drama issue, so. Just feel free to, because it's already, you know, we've already talked about.
So we can send out an email to the group saying who wants to volunteer. Okay, that's perfect.
It's coming from the committee, so we've already decided we want to do the table right now, or that is the thing about.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so I was trying to get rid of all of us on the right hand side here, I realize that's not me. So here's the electrification survey results. And it took us quite a bit of time to get through it. Oops. Basically, what we're trying to do is two things, and Lisa and Steve and Phoebe probably did most of the work on getting the survey itself in a framework that has all the questions we want to get answered. But had a combination of finding out who's interested in electrification, what do people know about electrification, and it's part of an advertiser as well. You can tell by the statement, and some of the statements that are here. And since I had popped up the other presentation by mistake, since as a result of Zano, been studying, what does electrification do? What are the impacts to us? And if you guys want to see that presentation sometime, I was kind of amazed at the numbers I picked up. There's a very good amount, number of people who responded. You already know it was connected and selected through the city's website. And the reason for electrification and energy in general, we're also working on the metrics too. We're looking at, are we reducing how much energy we use and what kind of energy are we using? That's part of what we're looking at from here as well. But basically, one of the points, and maybe it's later in the slide deck, was some things that people picked up from this was we're trying to make them electrified. The point is this. The state of California already said no more gas after 2050. The utility said we don't want to supply gas after 2045 because we don't want to be in the business. So basically, electrification is going to occur. And the first studies on this actually occurred in 2010. One of the things we got was people are aware that there's new technologies and that electrification is not what you remember from the 1970s. But they didn't know the details. And they don't know the details about how they can fund it and why it's beneficial for them. Cost is the primary barrier. And we saw this over and over throughout the survey. And we're going to show you the results here as well. And because of where we are and the experience we've had in the last few years, having reliable electricity is a precondition of electrifying. One of the things that we also got was people can't find contractors. The contractors are trained, and if they do contact contractors and say, hey, I want to put in a heat pump, contractor says, no, you don't want to do that. And that's because very few are trained. And those who are doing it today are charging what I consider unreasonable amounts for it, because the installation of mine costs about the same as hot water heat. The financial options that are there are complicated and difficult to access, and so that needs to be addressed. And like I said, a lot of the responses suggest that the city of Sebastopol is initiating electrification as opposed to trying to prepare its citizens for what's coming, so that it's not a big surprise for them and painful. Oops, not going in the right direction. There we go. So demographics, let's start with that. That's what you see in front of me. We were really surprised the number of people we got from Sebastopol, for the number of citizens who live in Sebastopol. This is a very high percentage of the citizenry. As an example, MTC's done a number of surveys as well. And looking for the reliability, they're disappointed about the number of responses. We got enough responses to have a 5% margin of error. That's a very high and very low error rate. And most of the people who responded were inside Sebastopol. Many were in the unincorporated areas. We don't know how close they are, 95472. And then we had a few from Santa Rosa and then others who answered the survey. There we go. And it was people with their primary residence. Okay, it wasn't renters. Now, in Sebastopol, my recollection is about 45 to 50% of the population rents. So you would expect that it would be 50-50, but it's not, because the people who can actually do something are the ones that own the building. And so it's residents who live here and own their building. That comes later on, we have a recommendation of follow-on work that needs to be done. We asked about awareness on heat pumps, and people knew about heat pumps. When we get further through the survey, we'll find out that even though they know about heat pumps, they don't know the difference between a heat pump and an electric heater. And there's a very big difference between those. I gave a talk last week, and Steve corrected something on it. I've changed my deck now, so I use 3.71 as opposed to 3.17. And it turned out that in using a heat pump, to get the same amount of heat into your home or into your water, costs you less in today's electricity than the gas costs you. Induction cooktops, again, we've got lots of people knew about them, but how they work, what they do, and why they might like them as opposed to be forced to use them wasn't clear. Lots of chefs are now starting to use induction cooktops because they're so adjustable compared to electric, and electric really could be difficult to use. So it has adjustability of gas without the bad health effects and environmental impacts. They know there's rebates and they know there's incentives in most cases, but how you get them turned out, as we went through the survey, very difficult to figure out. And I even tried contacting the places that were supposed to be the experts, and they sent me the places that didn't exist, or for incentives that don't exist, or the wrong contact. And I found a couple that sent to Kerry that I thought we might leverage at the county level that are taking the time and have staff and are trying to do education. This is ongoing education, because the incentives that exist today, in about 45 days, maybe they don't exist anymore because the money ran out or something else has changed. Then we asked what kinds of changes were people considering. Hot water heaters and space heaters are not the two largest that people were considering making changes of. Now, those are the ones where we can get the greatest reduction in energy. Now, Metrics Group has been collecting information now as to how much energy is pumped into the city of Sebastopol. And it turns out that we have marginally reduced our energy per capita over the last 13 years. Now, that's hard to believe since we predominantly are using LEDs now. We're doing other things. So there's a lot more that we need to be working on. This is most basic. So an oven, those end up being electric. Battery storage, we're surprised the number of people looking at it. Now with NEM3, probably more people are looking at battery storage because it changes nowadays. Where many people are looking at rooftop storage, rooftop solar. Are you considering electrification? This is very heartening. 45% of the people are considering electrification. And they need more information. And why are people considering electrification? So this is how we started putting things together. When we find out, are you considering electrification? Are you not considering electrification? Why would you not? What are the obstacles in asking those questions? I know the primary problem we run into is the grid, as far as why not considering. Now, I know Sandy asked that question one time to me several meetings ago when I brought something up about electrification, saying, you know, with what we have here, how can we do these things? The answer is this, is that you can't do this by itself. There's other things that will change in our society as to how we get energy and how energy comes to our homes. That's in process already. There's a team at PG&E working on the vehicle grid. There's a team at PG&E working on microgrids. This is happening in other places as well. So we'll hear more about that. The problem that we've had over the past has been that legislation, regulations have been designed to protect our investor-owned facilities and making sure that they can stay solid. Well, that's a centralized approach where we had control over centralized energy, but we had no control over consumption. Well, today we're moving into something where we have no control over supply and we have no control over demand. So it's an entirely different infrastructure, and that's happening not in Sebastopol, it's happening for the country. Obstacles. Number one, so much bigger than everything else. It's too expensive. Zeno arranged for me to meet with his neighbor who works at Sonoma County Power and talking to him about her hot water heater, her heat pump. I think it cost her a couple $100 because she knew where to find all those entries. And she had a much more expensive one than I have. I applied for one and it turned out that I was 2 days too late. So I didn't get the incentive because I had installed it 90 days before and I applied on the 92nd day. Those are the kinds of things that are making the conversion to electric expensive. And recently, the analysis that I did, again, it's Zeno's fault, reading a book on Electrify. I went and checked all the numbers to find out that in our area, it would cost you less running electric heat pumps in your house than using gas. Assistance needed financially. So the numbers fit and sync up all the way through. And by the way, I hope you read the longer write-up that was sent to you. We did a lot more writing up and thinking about what the responsibility correlated. That's the reason it took a couple of months to do this. Rather than just take the answers and plump them down and give you the answers, we wanted to analyze them and then look up and find out what some of the details were that were behind these things as well. Technical. Well, who do you go to for the technical help? My installer, I had to read the manual and tell them how to install it. I was lucky enough when I got my gas furnace replaced that those guys actually knew how to do it, and they're actually pretty good. Installer referral. So you see all of this sitting together, and then there were generalized comments, which Steve went through and started gathering with. He just said, "What do you want to say?" And most of them talked about the grid. Most of them said, we need more information because it's not in a place where we can get it. And they thanked us for the survey because they wanted to get more information. So those general comments led us to understand that most people believe that Sebastopol was leading the charge on electrification as opposed to trying to protect its citizens and making sure that they were all prepared for the changes that are occurring. One of the points that was brought up is talking about charging cars. 50% of the cars, new cars bought in the Bay Area last year were plug-ins. Now they weren't all full electric, some were hybrid plug-ins. And those numbers.
Was that 50 or 15?
50. Okay, the year before, 27% of electric, new car sales were electric, so the numbers are growing very fast. There's a forecast by one of the Sandy Monroe that by 2027, that 50% of all new car sales for the United States will be electric. Having driven an electric car since 1998, I can tell you, it's a lot easier to drive them, they're a lot safer. So I like them. Anyway, the people weren't aware of the requirements, and there's a lot of information that's missing. So that takes us down to, see if I can skip through a lot of stuff instead of reading about the slides, if that's okay. Our next steps, first of all, we need to post the survey results to a publicly accessible link so people can see the results, the report, primarily. There were 222 of those 500 respondents who said, would you please send the survey results to me? I'd like to know about this stuff. We think, and this would come from you, that the results should be presented to council, and that would be an action item by you. And that we believe that the results should be shared with other agencies. A number of other agencies have actually reached out to us. Some said we're interested in finding out what the results are. These are all the different agencies working on this, and I think we should hook up with one and say, here's what we did with our survey, here's the information we got so far from citizens and what they're looking for. And then we need to work with the committee itself and figure out what some of the other next steps would be and identify the first efforts for electrification. So now we surveyed, we understand, and we understand some of the barriers as well. And some of the things that we might need to do. Oops, and that was the last slide, huh? Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm prepared to.
Thank you. For it. So I recently found out that Sebastopol has 48% homeowners and 52% renters.
Yeah.
So when you look at the slide where it's do you rent or own your home, you've got 12% renters and you've got 88% homeowners, which doesn't really reflect the demographics for Sebastopol.
Yeah.
So I'm, you know, I think part of the problem is that, for example, at Burbank Heights and Orchards and other apartment buildings, they don't get a lot of it. So they don't have access.
No, I
to
understand.
it.
In the report, one of the things that we pointed out was the miss on renters.
Okay.
And that we believe that either another survey or another effort was required for renters because there's two things that are occurring. And this is
Where's that?
it's,
Is this in the survey result?
I don't know if it's in the, we can put the slide that we can in the report that we're at. It's probably down towards the tail end, is that what I see? Yeah, okay.
Before the comments.
Yeah, because the reason that we look at this is that if you look at it from the point of view of who has the cost, in most cases, the landlord has the cost. And who has the value? The renter has the value. So we have an economic disjoint. And one of the questions that we need to do is, or create is a survey and find out how can we close that gap? By the way, we're not the only ones to notice that. Oakland's noticed this, everybody else who's been working on this, is one of the nuts to crack, is to figure out how we can make it that landlords can benefit by making and electrifying the buildings, so that their tenants can get the benefit. And we haven't got to do that yet. But part of the way to do that is to find out from landlords, what is it that you think is most important, and can we address those things? Is there any other question? Okay.
Yeah, and
That's all.
page 4 talks about of the full report, which is on the meeting page for this meeting, page 4,
of that report talks about the regulations.
And it's probably in the deck, and I went through it too fast in order to read what I put in front of me.
I understand that, and you know, we're very short on time, so.
Not my fault.
We consistently found when we're talking to people at events and farmers market and stuff like that, oh, I'm a writer. You know, they wanted to walk around and just, no, we want you to participate. But fortunately, a lot of the funding that's coming up for incentives and rebates is geared towards rental property. Finally, it's coming, but it's been very slow.
Yeah.
There is that disconnect. We have to figure out some way to help landlords want to do this.
And do you suggest looking at the report, because in the report, we have a number of things that we thought were important to go forward with. And I kind of did them on the side here. Number one is, we need better information. We need to get the information out to people. We need people to understand that electrification is coming. This is not Sebastopol, but electrification is coming, and we want to prepare, and we want everybody to benefit from it. That's the part that's most important for people to recognize that they can benefit from this. Some of our financial institutions don't have this yet. If you bought a house, you pay for the house up front and then live in it and have the benefit of the house all that time. Well, we have a lot of these things that are occurring. There's financial structures that do exist that are good. We get to PACE, is a really good one. But does anybody know how to apply for PACE and where you get that?
I think this is so great, and I am so like the report, the owner report is so worth reading, and you're gonna not read it. Really well done. I have a couple of suggestions before we post the survey results. And the pie chart about the percentage, 45% want to electrify and 55% don't. I think it's misleading because you're missing the slice of people who already electrify, which you capture in the following data. But I think the pie chart, like people really like pie charts. And what we really want to do is social marketing wise, show people that the electrifiers are in the majority or as close to the majority as possible.
Yeah.
I think adding that already electrified slice into that initial pie chart would be more informational and also more to people the direction.
And we had thought about that when we did the survey, that we after David, so we put it on the pie chart. But we didn't ask that question. In fact, a number of things that we learned from going through the survey, and I think we have it in the report.
You have it in the report, but I think.
No.
I think
Have a report is the gaps that we had as a result of how we asked the questions, right? And that's one of the gaps. We did have a number of people said, I have already electrified. And they were excited to tell us that.
Yeah, so I do think it's worth redoing that pie chart, and you can.
I can't redo the pie chart because I don't have the data.
You do have the data. We have 39 people already elected. You can take those out of the. You do though, you have that information in the survey, which is I mean, it's just like, it's a data, it takes all the data.
I understand, Jerry, it's the desire to keep the honesty of the statistics, live and dance statistics, right? That's can be interpreted any way you want, but so I think perhaps the way forward is to note on that particular pie chart slide, hey, you don't change the pie chart, but no, the survey didn't ask about existing aggregation. We do know that enough are. Yes, it's just exported on that.
That's fine, we can do that. One of the things I forgot to also mention is this, and it's in the write-up, I think I was here and I passed it. One of the largest gaps is this: when you go to get a furnace or a stove or a range or a hot water heater, you call the city, or do you talk to your neighbor, or you call a contractor? And a contractor is the one who gives you advice. One of the things that we wrote down was the key to selling the concept of electrification is to get every contractor that we have trained and comfortable and recognizing the value. The ones that I've worked with who are now in this business are very much opposed, but most of them are not.
So this is such an important topic that I would like to continue.
Okay.
And just continue the discussion at the next meeting, and hopefully committee members who were not present or who our president did not have the time to read the full 23 pages, which maybe skip the last part about every public comment, which is informative, but like you can, it takes a lot more time to read all the comments and read the rest of the report, and the report's really well done.
It's too much, right? So,
So yeah, I think it would be worthwhile for us to continue the conversation at the next meeting and I know more time for that discussion.
Yeah, one of the things I asked the data too, is to think about what are the actions that the committee wants to propose as a result of reading the report. I don't put the words in your mouth, we give you some hints as to what those things might be.
Yeah,
Because some of them will cost money, some of them are just how we think about things, some of us go look for somebody else's analysis.
so Sandy, did you have something?
I have a question. So what I have, that was said to me is the drafts, it has little like pages of the results. It's about 23 pages.
Yeah.
Is that the report?
That's the, and I just changed the name on the curriculum I put up on the website that we're using, because I realized that was, Steve started the draft and kept editing to the draft, and we were changing the
I think it's great, and I think it's really, I'm really glad to see all the comments into it.
All right, so we will continue with this discussion at the next meeting. And thank you guys for this work. It's really so valuable.
One note on this, I think, and I don't know if it's action from the committee, but I would like to look at when we could schedule this as a presentation to council. It's because, and Jerry, I think your presentation was really in terms of the time for the council and just the knowledge, so. Yeah, I remember because we get that scheduled in and they have a, I mean, it won't be August, or September, or something this fall, so just give them their calendar.
Sure, as long as Steve's talking.
I think one question or two, you mentioned before that people were asking, when can we see the survey result, right? Well, is that something that we could, that we need to actually vote on? That now we can make the survey results accessible to the people who requested them, or put them.
I think this recording will be posted online and we can refer people to that and say we approved survey results would be available after this meeting.
So the draft, this draft survey is on already on the website, so it's already public, right, in its draft form, I can send that to folks. But if you, I mean, it sounds like we had, if you want to. I heard a couple of, it looks like the note about the already notified. I don't know if there are other comments or edits that you all want to suggest to Jerry and Steve, or.
Yeah, I think we'd be good to have a full discussion before we move it from draft status to the status. And so,
One point, Steve has the 222 emails that asked for the survey. And if you would empower us to send with the change that you asked for, a survey out of the 222 people, that would be nice.
oh, what I'm saying is that we would say it's a draft at this point, and so it's
Okay.
perhaps finish discussion.
Yeah, and then maybe with the final, we can put that on.
Yeah.
Maybe not just the date.
Yeah.
So,
So in other words,
and you can, if I get you, like, no need to where that will be on the website, so you can also include that. And send it in the box.
Oh, that'd be great.
It looks like we'll find, the ground. And then next meeting date, whatever that is, check back. For any final results.
Look, I the note on the one slide.
Yeah, and I just think we wanna, like, for press purposes, because I think it's worth letting the press know, we wanna have a final product that is what we wanna put in front of the press, that's not the draft.
Yeah, we won't put it in the newsletter, it won't be going to council until after this week, so the next meeting, to be good to finalize. the meeting.
Perfect, so thank you guys, we're gonna table items E and F. Most of the chair report items, unless you have been your ethics training, please. Just for everyone to know, the website, as Grace said, is still in process, things are still getting fixed, so. Be patient because it's been a lot of work for them. And if you have input for the next agenda, please see me before you leave today, so I get it captured. And then action items to review are. No, wait, do we have any action items? This is why I need Joshua.
I think
And,
the action is to continue.
Yeah.
Continue on. I'm sending in a couple of things. Susie, help make notes, so I don't forget this time. Yay. And then the community impact report and the local road safety plan, you can just email the engineer for me to find that and send them the draft. And then continuing on application, so that is.
and, Sonali, did you have anything about the library that we need to cover at this meeting? No? Perfect. So thank you all for coming. We're gonna adjourn to the August 8th at 3 p.m. Same that time, same that place. And we will appreciate your time.